if God doesn't exist. The truth is, Kevin, they know he exists.
Oh, of course.
They hate him. That's what it's all about.
That's exactly what it is, and that's pretty much what my character is. And in the movie God's Not Dead, I mean, I know these guys must believe in something, otherwise they wouldn't get so angry about it. And they don't like the fact that there's a higher power out there that's judging how they live their lives.
A couple months ago, I made a video called Why Theists Can't Convert Atheists, where I discussed the pervasive problem of religious people trying to convert atheists without ever actually listening to them or trying to understand what they actually believe. Predictably, I got a lot of comments on that video from religious people trying to convert me while asserting things about me which they would have known were wrong if they'd actually listened. Many of the things asserted were all too familiar. Within certain theist circles, dialogue on atheists is dominated by ideas which misrepresent atheists entirely. These ideas could easily be shot down within a single honest conversation with an atheist, but many theists who have never been able or willing to have such a conversation go about propagating these ideas. The commenters I mentioned were those theists. They'd been fed lies about atheists, likely by other theists, and then went on to spread those lies themselves. So, I'm here as an atheist to lead an honest conversation about why those ideas are wrong and how we can all make this conversation better. Atheists lose faith because of hardship. This is such a ridiculous trope which religious media loves to propagate. Look at the antagonist of the movie God's Not Dead and the protagonist of the TV show God Friended Me. One disbelieves because his wife died, and the other disbelieves because his mom died. This insinuates that atheists only disbelieve for terrible emotional reasons, and that the whole atheist hate God idea has merit. If you spend any time in the atheist community, you know how often this trope gets thrown around and how poorly it reflects reality. Personally, I became an atheist during a pretty decent part of my life. I had just graduated with honors, I had a job I liked, I was in good health, and I had healthy relationships. I changed my opinion based on reason, and there was no trauma involved. Plenty of atheists share my experience, but of course it's always best to just ask why someone deconverted rather than assume. Personal anecdotes aside, this idea doesn't stand against what we know about happiness and atheism on a global scale. See, if atheists really do deconvert because of suffering and hardship, we should expect to find the countries which report the least happiness and most suffering to be the most atheistic countries. That's definitely not what's been observed, however. The happiest countries in the world, places like Finland, Denmark, and the Netherlands, are also some of the most atheistic countries in the world. It also seems that the least happy countries in the world are also pretty religious. Now, I don't think there's a causal relationship there, but it does discredit the idea that people exposed to discontentment and hardship are much more likely to become atheists. A great idea for figuring out how and why someone became an atheist is actually asking them, and then, here's the tricky part, listening. Atheists who deconverted were never truly religious. If I, with my 20 years of incredible devotion to Christianity, my strict practice, and my personal relationship with Jesus Christ was not a true Christian, then no one is. The atheist community is filled with and led by people who were once extremely religious. Matt Dillahunty was a faithful Southern Baptist who deconverted during seminary. Seth Andrews was one of the most devoted and successful Christian radio broadcasters in the world before deconverting. The entire community is dominated by voices of those who were once more religious than most. A huge problem with this statement is that it's both a no true Scotsman and unfalsifiable. It touts a definition of religious that is meant to exclude counterexamples, and it's completely impossible to prove wrong. As a consequence, it can't be evidenced beyond a simple assertion of its validity either. If you're religious right now and have made this statement, realize that if you ever stop believing, your religiosity would immediately be considered to have always been fake under this standard. In fact, this reasoning can be used to assert the falsehood of anyone's religious practice as long as that person's beliefs have changed at least once in their life. Oh, you used to be Baptist, but now you're Methodist? Well, you were never a true Baptist. Oh, you were agnostic, but now you're a theist? You were never a true agnostic. Oh, you used to be Sunni, but now you're Shia? You were never a true Muslim. This assertion is infinitely malleable, impossible to prove, and consequently meaningless. Beyond all of that, this assertion is also belittling and arrogant. I strongly recommend the video Never Say This to an Atheist by Holy Kool-Aid if you want to go more in depth on this. You'll never make ground believing this about atheists, so I suggest you check it out to understand why. Atheists have just never studied X religion. I understand where this comes from because if you're convinced of a certain idea, you assume others would also be convinced given the same information. What we have to acknowledge, though, is that someone can be acutely aware of a belief system and the information it relies upon without actually accepting it. For example, I have a minor in Bible from a Christian university, I've read through the Bible multiple times, I've extensively studied various denominations, and I've studied the Bible since childhood, even going as far as competing in Bible knowledge tournaments. Yet still, people assume that I don't think the Bible is the Word of God because I've never read it. The reality is that I don't think it's the Word of God because I have. The same goes for other religions. People say, you're not a Muslim because you've never studied the Quran. Yes, I have. They'll say you're not a Buddhist because you've never studied Buddhism. Again, yes, I have. For every religion out there, there's a non-believer who has studied it extensively and still does not believe. Two great examples are Bart Ehrman for Christianity and Abdullah Samir for Islam. I understand that it can be difficult to accept that someone might have studied your ideas extensively, be in their right mind, and still have reason to reject them, because that suggests that your ideas are flawed. But that's not an excuse to egotistically assume or assert the ignorance of someone with which you disagree. Such an assumption is especially problematic because atheists are typically more religiously literate than religious people. A Pew poll from 2010 suggests that atheists and agnostics are actually the most religiously literate group in the United States. So if these statistics are correct, a religious person calling an atheist religiously illiterate is often the pot calling the kettle black. A better way to discover what an atheist has or hasn't studied is to just politely ask them. Plenty of religious people in my comment section and in real life have been nice enough to do that, and we've usually had a pleasant conversation from there. It's not a crazy idea to refrain from insulting someone in favor of asking them simple questions. People on all sides of this issue should try that more often. There are no atheists in foxholes. This is probably the most insulting statement of them all. Atheists serve in the military, and judging by their own admission, they don't stop believing when they're literally in foxholes. There are those who have had terminal illnesses and never changed their minds as atheists before they died. People like Stephen Hawking come to mind. Dying doesn't automatically make someone believe in God, and if one tries to defend the idea that it does, it's easy to see that this statement can be and often is made unfalsifiable. Hey, atheists don't start believing in God when they think they're going to die. Oh yes, they do. They just change their minds when they survive. But even atheists who are dying still don't say that dying has made them believe in God. Well, they're just lying about it. They really do believe at that point. This is impossible to disprove and easy to assert, and again, this reasoning can consequently be used to assert the opposite. Oh, there are no theists who are happy and at peace with mortality, and any happy person who says they believe in God is just lying. See how ridiculous that is? Also, this idea of fear and misery causing theism totally conflicts with the atheist stop believing because of hardship idea. Yet some people seem to believe both ideas. Atheists supposedly deconvert out of misery, but they also start believing in God if they're too miserable or in fear of their lives. Apparently, to be a theist, your life has to be not too good, not too bad, but right in the middle. I'm sure theists out there who have had their lives threatened, and those theists who have always been safe and cared for, could tell you that neither state leads to atheism. If you want to go on believing this, go ahead. But know that 1, your position is equally as justifiable as me not believing any happy people believe in God, no matter how much they tell me otherwise. And 2, that you're belittling the integrity of those who have been at death's door and come back. Many of those people put themselves in that situation for others, maybe even for you. So don't be surprised if your rejection of literally any and all evidence sets people off. Atheists secretly believe in God. If I haven't said this enough already, I'll say it one more time. This is unfalsifiable. If you're set on believing this, you can fabricate any reason to reject evidence to the contrary without violating the reason behind this statement. Coming from a Christian background, I get why a lot of people believe this. Many interpret certain scriptures to say that God has told us all that atheists don't exist. Romans 19:18 through 20 is a good example of this. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people, who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. It makes sense that people would cling to this idea because if they accept this biblical interpretation, accepting the idea that atheists actually don't believe in God would conflict with their understanding of the Word of God. If God really did inspire this, it unfortunately seems that he's totally okay with his followers accepting that which is impossible to prove or disprove and is therefore on the same logical ground as statements running in the opposite direction. But put yourself in my shoes. What if I said you don't actually believe in God? You say you really do believe, but I call you a liar. You say that you live your life like you believe it, and I say you're just going through the motions, but you really don't believe. You say I can't read your mind, and it's impossible to prove or disprove my statement with my ridiculous standards. And I say that's exactly what a fake theist would say. Then I tell you that my reasoning is somehow superior to human logic. You'd think I'm impossibly stubborn and arrogant, right? Yes, and you'd be right to think that. What should be taken away from this is that the solution to all of these ridiculous statements is genuine empathy. If you put yourself in an atheist's shoes, you can see how they could just as easily hurl these ideas in your direction. If you show empathy toward us, you'll actually ask us what we think and believe rather than asserting it before you even try to understand. I encourage atheists to have the same empathy toward theists as well. Don't belittle others with statements like these, and if you want to have any productive dialogue with those who believe differently, you're going to have to listen before you speak. Thanks for watching. I've been Drew of Genetically Modified Skeptic. As a reminder, I am still raising money for Ex-Muslims in North America, which is an organization aiding ex-Muslims in their transition out of Islam. That's often a very difficult process to go through. In my live stream for charity last week, I promised that if I hit $5,000 by my last video this month, I would go out into a public place and sing this on camera.
Here we go. Come on, ready? Virginity is cool. Come on. Virginity is cool. What up? Virginity is cool. He's got it. Virginity is cool. Come on. Virginity.
So if you want to see me embarrass myself like that, then go donate. We're $1,800 away as of the filming of this video, and you guys have until the 31st of December to hit the goal. The link to the GoFundMe page is in the description. As always, go ahead and subscribe, check out my Patreon, follow me on Twitter and Facebook at GM Skeptic, join my Discord, and until next time, stay skeptical.